First, I want to introduce Lashunda. Hey, Lashunda, how you doing?
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Lashunda, you want to give us a little insight of your story?
February 2022, I gave birth to Legacy. She was my miracle baby. I didn't think I could have babies at first. So, for me to get pregnant with her so late in age, it was amazing. I was excited. She was the community miracle baby because everybody knew that I wanted to be a mother. I am a mother. I adopted two of my previous kids, and they are my babies too. But to have one of your own that came from you that you can look at and see was a different story. So everything was fine. I went into the hospital to be evaluated. I was forced into having a cesarean section. That's a whole nother story. But she came out. She was breathing. They put her in the NICU. The first 72 hours were critical. She flew through 72 hours. She even opened her eyes, and the nurse sent me pictures. Was like, she's opening her eyes, like she is like really strong, and she's a trooper. So she did really well. On the fourth day, they were going to release me from the hospital. The exact moment that I signed the paperwork for my release, they called me on my cell phone and told me to come down to the NICU. Went down to the NICU. They told me that they believed she had an infection and that they wanted to start antibiotics and so on, which I, of course, agreed. I wanted to know exactly what they were going to do, and I had them assure me they were going to do everything they needed to do. I was on top of it. I was on my chart nonstop, like nonstop, because I went home. So when I went home, I was watching from home. The next morning, I went back up there to see her. So when they initially called me downstairs, they said first that they thought that her bowel had perforated, meaning that it had tore and there was an opening in it. They said that was going to cause an infection and that she was more likely really gravely ill. And I said, well, do you know if there's a perforation or not? And they said, no. I said, well, until you know, we can't speak on that. And I said, what do we do? So he was like, he thought that she was too small for surgery. So I said, well, no, I want to hear from the surgeon. I literally had the surgeon come down. And the surgeon came down and he agreed. He said he was just getting a widespread diagnosis. He said, because he doesn't know either if she has a bowel perforation. He said, because he doesn't have any testing saying that. He said, but he does think she's too small for surgery if there was one, that if it is one, that the antibiotics would be my best route. So they told me they were going to have a scan done for her to see, and at that point they would go from there. But in the meantime, they will start antibiotics. I went home. I was checking my chart. She never had the scan done that day. They continued the antibiotics. The next day, there was a scan done, and there was no showing of a bowel perforated. They said, "Oh, well, we're treating her for just bacteria infection, basically." So they said when babies are small, they get infection. So they said they didn't even want to give her milk yet because of it. So they just continued the antibiotics. They said they're going to continue the antibiotic, give her blood, give her plasma, and everything else that she needed, and just monitor it. Okay, and when she had it done the next day, it showed that she did not have a perforated bowel. When I went to see her that day, she to me, she looked different. She was moved in another place. I couldn't stay long because they had something going on where they needed everybody to clear out. I left and went home and continued monitoring and calling. I called all the time. The first night that I got home, they called me about 9:30ish and said, "Oh, Legacy is really sick. She may not make it through the night." And I said, "What?" I said, "Legacy is going to make it through the night." And so they was like, okay, they hung up. Legacy made it through the night. I got a text message the next morning from one of the nurses from the labor and delivery room. Legacy was really popular, needless I say, in the NICU because of her name for one, and because I gave them the business upstairs before having her because I didn't want to have her that early. One of the traveling nurses there, she texted me that morning, the second morning that I was home, and she said, Legacy's here and she looks beautiful. She's doing amazing. So again, I'm going by what I'm being told. So when I went that second night I was at home, they called me back again the same time the next night and said, "Oh, Legacy is not doing well. She may not make it through the night." I said, "Please stop calling me every night with this, please." Wow. I said, I believe in God, and my daughter's going to be fine. They called me back maybe 10 minutes later and said she had passed. And I said, what do you mean she's passed? I just looked at her my chart. She was fine. Like, what do you mean she's passed? And they said that they tried to resuscitate, but she didn't respond to anything. They asked me, was I coming up there? And I said, I'm trying to digest everything. I just had a cesarean. I can't drive. I was like, I'll be up there in the morning. That there were no notations in the chart saying that she was in any kind of danger of passing. Not that night nor the night before. As soon as I hung up with the doctor, I immediately grabbed my cell phone to check the my chart. Then when I went to check the my chart, this is within minutes, like literally, it couldn't have been 5 minutes. It was completely wiped clean. Her picture was gone off of my chart. Her
Oh
name was
wow.
gone. I could not see a folder, a file, nothing on her. It was like she had never existed.